Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving into something pretty much everyone struggles with, but honestly, we hardly ever talk about it. We're talking about the absolute superpower of what we don't say. Seriously, if you've ever felt like your words are just completely tripping over each other, or if you've got this idea in your head that to be totally fluent, you gotta fire off words as fast as humanly possible, well, you're gonna wanna stick around for this. Let's just jump right in. So, let's kick things off with a question that might sound totally backward. What if pauses are actually the secret key to confidence? Usually we think confidence means this rapid fire, unbroken stream of words, right? Like any hesitation is just a crack in the armor. But what if I told you that one of the absolute best lessons in communication and timing comes from a broken piece of machinery, specifically a clock that literally never ticked? We're going to walk through a really incredible story that completely flips everything you thought you knew about fluency right on its head. Okay, picture this. Smack in the middle of a quiet little village, there's this massive, towering clock tower. And inside it, an ancient timepiece. But here's the catch. It doesn't move. It doesn't make a single sound. The hands are just entirely frozen in place. So to anyone walking by, it absolutely doesn't measure time anymore. It's just this totally silent monument hanging out in the middle of a bustling community. Now, it wasn't always a giant paperweight. Back in the day, this clock ticked with perfect precision. Absolute exact accuracy. Its rhythm was so dependable that it basically guided the lives of everyone in the village. They woke up, went to work, and went to sleep strictly by its measurements. It was literally the heartbeat of the whole community, keeping everyone perfectly in sync. But you know how it goes. Time eventually takes its toll on everything, right? So the clock got rusted, the gears completely seized up, that familiar metallic ticking completely vanished, and because it wasn't doing its one job, tracking seconds and minutes, people just stopped caring. They'd walk right past it day in and day out, muttering about how completely useless it had become. It was just totally ignored. Well, almost everyone ignored it. Enter this young guy named Ehsan. Now, Ehsan noticed something pretty bizarre. But he actually wasn't focused on the broken machinery. He was using the quiet space around that silent clock to just sit and observe the villagers. Day after day, he just listened. And he realized something about how they were talking. It was so fast, just insanely rushed. They spoke with literally zero pauses. It was like watching someone try to cram a 10-minute presentation into a 3-minute time slot. Their words were just crashing into each other, which made their sentences feel so heavy and honestly just exhausting to listen to. Because they were speaking so frantically, the actual meaning of what they were trying to say was constantly getting lost in all that noise. And this really sets up the whole problem. On one side, you've got the villagers' normal routine, this chaotic collision of heavy sentences where they basically confused speaking fast with speaking well. But on the flip side, you have Ehsan's light bulb moment. He realized the issue wasn't time or that they didn't have enough of it. The real problem was how they were moving through time. Now, when he actually told the villagers this, they literally laughed in his face. They were like, hey, maybe go fix the broken clock instead of critiquing our conversations. But Ehsan was onto something huge. He had a totally transformative idea for fixing how they communicated. To really get what Ehsan was talking about, let's actually try it ourselves real quick. Seriously, wherever you are right now, read these sentences out loud with me, and I want you to intentionally pause where the breaks are. You ready? Here we go. I will speak clearly. I pause to give meaning. Fluency is not speed, it is rhythm. Okay, did you feel that difference? Notice those pauses. They aren't mistakes, right? They're these deliberate, carefully crafted little spaces. And honestly, that is exactly how natural, fluent English is supposed to work. So Ehsan starts teaching this really unusual lesson to his neighbors. He asked them to do something that just felt completely alien. He asked them to speak slowly, to intentionally put pauses between their ideas. Basically, to just let their words breathe for a second. And as you'd probably guess, at first, it was incredibly awkward for them. People complained nonstop. They kept saying it was way too slow, that it felt so unnatural. They were so used to just pouring out this rushing river of words that suddenly having these pockets of silence felt totally deafening to them. But Ehsan's response to all their grumbling, it changed absolutely everything. He looked at them and said, when the clock stopped, it didn't lose time, it revealed it. Think about that for a second. By taking away that relentless, rushing tick-tock, the silent clock actually let them see the empty space between the seconds. Ehsan was showing them that pauses are what actually create clarity. He proved that silence doesn't take away from your words, it actually adds profound meaning to them. And finding that internal rhythm,
That's what builds true, unshakable confidence.
Little by little, the whole village started to shift. They developed this entirely new cadence, which is basically the natural musical rhythm of speech. Instead of just throwing words at each other in a total panic, their conversation started to take on this incredibly calm, confident, and honestly beautiful flow. They literally found the music in their communication just by embracing those silent beats.
And the reason this worked is because their speech became deliberate, meaning done with intention. Instead of just frantically blurting out every single thought the exact second it popped into their heads, they started intentionally choosing when to speak, and just as importantly, when to pause. Every single word and every little pocket of silence between those words suddenly had a real purpose. They finally stopped rushing past each other, and they actually started connecting. The ultimate payoff for all this deliberate pacing was actual, genuine fluency. You know, we so often mix up fluency with speed, right? Like we assume that if someone talks a mile a minute, they must be a master of the language. But smooth and natural speaking relies entirely on rhythm. Think about it. A river flows smoothly not because it's blasting forward at 100 miles an hour, but because it's following a natural, unforced path. A few weeks go by, and the transformation is just night and day. Those rushed, heavy, colliding sentences from before, completely gone. Replaced by words that were calm, crystal clear, and super confident. It was actually so noticeable that strangers passing through town were completely blown away by it. Travelers would literally stop and ask, "Why do you all speak so beautifully?" And the villagers? They just smile and say, "We learned from a broken clock."
So what are the big takeaways from this story? Well, it leaves us with 3 absolutely vital lessons. First up, fluency is not about speaking fast. More often than not, speed is just a mask for feeling insecure. Second, true communication absolutely requires pauses to separate and really highlight your most important ideas. And third, silence is not the absence of language. It's actually a fundamental, structural part of language itself. A broken clock might not be able to measure time, but as Ehsan showed everyone, it can 100% teach you how to master it. Okay, so how do we actually take this awesome little allegory and apply it to our own learning today? Well, here are 3 actionable steps you can start using right now. Step 1, practice speaking with pauses. I mean, literally force yourself to stop after a thought. Just take a beat. Step 2, focus on rhythm, not speed. Start listening to native speakers and really tune in to the music of their phrasing rather than just how fast they get to the period at the end of the sentence. And step 3, stay consistent. Look, it's going to feel a little uncomfortable, maybe even a bit silly at first, just like it did for those villagers. But pushing through that awkward phase, that is exactly how you build that incredibly smooth, natural flow. I want to leave you with one final, kind of provocative thought to chew on today. Fluency is not in your words, it is in your rhythm. The next time you catch yourself rushing or stressing out that you aren't talking fast enough to sound like a native speaker, I want you to remember that silent clock. Remember Ehsan. Just take a deep breath, embrace the silence, and ask yourself, are you just rushing blindly through your words, or are you actually commanding your rhythm? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep practicing that deliberate cadence, and I'll see you next time.